Hi, my name is Charles Heller. I work in talk radio. I've been doing that for about 20 years now. Have several programs. Have a free market economic program called the Swap Shop, where people call up and buy and sell and trade. And I make fun of their things and play sound effects. So what I do is I play in the free market, and I encourage other people to, what I've done is established a community of interest for people to trade fairly and freely with each other as long as the goods and services that they offer to buy and sell are lawful and moral. Lawful means it doesn't violate the laws of God, lawful means it doesn't violate the laws of man, and moral means it doesn't violate the laws of God. So you can sell your machine gun if it's on a Form 4, but no pornography. I don't care what you do, but I'm not going to make it easier for you to do it if it's not good for society. So that's kind of what I do in the free market. I have a program called Liberty Watch, which is about maintaining a free country, making sure government remains servant, not master. And then the last hour is called America Armed and Free, about things with a muzzle, a nozzle, or a blade, things that fly, shoot, and cut. And I do that from the perspective of a guy who for 26 years now has been teaching people how to defend themselves in the form of the Arizona Concealed Weapons Permit class. But if you think that what I teach is about guns, you are looking at the part of the iceberg that's above the water. Because what I teach people is about what to do. Number one, the thing I try to teach people to do is to try and stay out of the system. That's the most important thing you could do. Because our system, our legal system, when it comes to using force in self-defense, is designed to ingest you, digest you, and excrete you into the prison system. That's just what it's designed to do. That's how it works. And yes, police are an important part of society, but they're not charged with the responsibility of protecting you individually. In fact, they're immune from it. Unless you are in custody, there is no duty for a police officer, or for that matter, a firefighter, to protect you from anything. And I could go into a long diatribe for most of my time here about why that's true, but the fact is that it is, and it's discoverable. So what I've been doing for the last 26 years is teaching people the ins and outs of self-defense. And I looked at the bios of all the other people who are speaking. For goodness sakes, George Gilder, Dr. Moore. I mean, these people who have everybody on this dais has got either PhD, LLD, or MD after their name. And I come to you, homo sans literis, man without letters. What can I do for you? So here's what my grandfather taught me. In 6th grade, I stayed overnight one night at my grandfather's house. And I was doing math in 6th grade. And I brought him my 6th grade math book. And I said, I can't figure this out, Grandpa. And he said, and he immediately took my math book, looked at the problem, and he went back 3 chapters. And he started asking me questions out of chapter 3. Now, this is upsetting to an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old who asks a specific question about chapter 6. No, you don't understand. The question's here. He said, if you don't know chapter 3, you don't know chapter 6. So that's what I can do for you that's different. I know chapter 3. I've been studying it all the way from chapter 0 up to now about the use of force in self-defense. That's the value I can provide to you, and that's the background of what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to you today about what to do after you've used force in self-defense to stay out of the system and not be ingested by the system, digested, and pooped into the prison system, okay? So first I have to give you a background. I assume that based on the topic of this entire conference, disaster preparedness, or this organization, that most of you have some tools of preparedness one way or another, yeah? Is that a good assumption? Okay, something or other. It doesn't have to be a firearm. Look, not every weapon is a firearm. Okay? But let's talk broadly. Most states, especially in the West, have laws that are pretty common about what you can and can't do in terms of use of physical force and use of deadly force in self-defense. So I'm going to give you a really basic orientation of what you can do in terms of the use of physical force, a really brief orientation on what you can do in the use of deadly force, concentrate most of what I'm going to say about what to do after you've used force, and then open it up for any questions you might have. Understanding that this is a portion of a class that takes 8 hours. And I have 1 hour, and I have to include some time for questions. I am going to skip over some of the wave tops on this and give you a brief sort of explanation. In Arizona, you can do, if someone does something to you, for you to be able to legally justify using force against them, 2 conditions have to be present. Number 1 is what they're doing against you has to be unlawful, and what you're doing has to be lawful. If you accidentally, while you're talking on one phone and texting on the other, if you accidentally walk into your neighbor's house, and the neighbor says, "Get out of my house," and you look around and say, "Who painted the living room and changed the furniture?" Okay? Because you're not paying attention. You're not situationally aware. And he turns you around, spins you around, and propels you out the front door. He is within his law, provided he doesn't do it with deadly force. He is within his lawful rights, because you can't use deadly force against trespass. It's a misdemeanor. But if you resist him because he's shoving you, you are not entitled to that use of force, because you're the one that's not where you have a legal right to be, and he is the one who does have the legal right to be. So you can do, the conditions that have to be present, once again, are that the force against you has to be unlawful and an immediate threat. If someone says, "I'm going to go home, I'm going to get my lightweight officer's model, load it with Corban plus P, and shoot you center of mass," that's a very credible threat. It constitutes assault under threatening and intimidating under Arizona law. But physically, you cannot do anything about it because it's a verbal or future threat. Okay? There are 3 circumstances under which you cannot use physical force against another person. Now, am I talking too fast? Okay, because I can write through it. So, number 1 is it can't be against a verbal or future threat alone. No matter how vile the threat is, words alone cannot justify the use of physical force. Number 2, you cannot engage in an argument with another person that has the effect of escalating the fight, which then turns into physical force, and then claim that it was self-defense. So let's say somebody bangs into you in the local mall when you're on the Saturday, I lovingly call the Saturday husband drag through the mall, okay? And you know darn good and well that that person ran into you deliberately because they wanted to show off to their friends. Man or woman, it's getting to be kind of where more young women, I won't say ladies, but young women are doing stuff like this because they want to prove they have the generator of testosterone, okay? So, or generators of testosterone. So, you have a tendency to want to, once you get past about, 40, to think that you own the road, and somebody bangs into you and you want to engage in this crude anatomical reference to them. You know, you kneecap. And they respond in kind, you inferior vena cava, you, or something. And the fight escalates from there, and it turns into either a fist fight or the one with deadly weapons involved. You cannot say to the arriving police officer, "Well, he attacked me." No, he attacked you, you engaged in a fight that escalated, and verbal fisticuffs, and then it turned into actual fisticuffs. In Arizona at least, you've lost your right to be able to claim self-defense. You must, if there's any argument or contention at all, not just if somebody starts wailing on you, but if there's any kind of an argument, you must clearly communicate to the other person that you don't want to be part of a fight. You can easily do that by taking a step back, all right, and not using profanity. And not enticing them into a fight. And the third circumstance you can't use physical force is to resist an arrest that you know or should know is being made by a police officer, even if the arrest is unlawful, unless the officer does something so great that he becomes the perpetrator, like deliberately tries to murder you. You don't have to submit to that legally. But that's not my point here about excessive force. My point is using physical force in self-defense. So that's when you can use physical force. Now, what the law says is that you can use whatever force a reasonable person would do under the circumstances. Does anyone here operate within the legal system at all? Any attorneys in the room? you know who the reasonable person is they're referring to? Anybody know? Juror. Those are the reasonable persons you don't want to meet because it means you've been indicted. So my purpose in this is to keep you away from reasonable people, okay? That's the whole idea here. Now, when it comes to deadly force, if you're going to legally justify using deadly force against someone, you have some other conditions that apply. First of all, it has to be unlawful. It would have to be immediate and unlawful, have to be justified in using physical force, and one of three conditions would have to be present for you to legally justify using deadly force. And those three conditions are either the person uses a deadly weapon, or they do the assault against you in a deadly way, like trying to push you out a window of a high-rise building or off a cliff or something like that, or that they cause grave bodily injury. Grave bodily injury being defined as a loss of blood that would take stitches or a tourniquet to stop it, grave loss of consciousness, or the amputation of a body, or fracture or amputation of a body organ or part. So if those things aren't present, you're not legally, except in your home, you're not legally justified in using deadly force. Okay? So that's the underlying tenets. That's the foundation under which I'm going to tell you about what to do after you've used force when the police arrive. But before I go on, I don't want to leave anybody behind. Are there any questions thus far about the use of physical or deadly physical force? The three that you can't use deadly or physical force against, or the three you can use deadly force? The question was, what were the three conditions, possible conditions, justifying the use of deadly force? Thank you for asking. Great question. There are three circumstances outside your home under which you can use, you may legally justify using deadly force. I hesitate to say can use, because there is no red light, yellow light, green light. It's what would a reasonable person believe was immediately necessary. That's very much a yellow light, okay? So number one is if they use a deadly weapon. A deadly weapon doesn't have to be a firearm. Could be an edged weapon, could be a blunt force instrument, could be any number of things that could be considered deadly force. The ASP baton. Is anyone not familiar with ASP baton? The expandable baton that police carry? Looks a little like this, okay? Now the question is, on this stage, can I retract it? Yep, I can. Didn't hit it out too hard. By the way, the other end of this thing is kind of a neat tool, weapon. And one of the neat things about it is it has the ability to strobe. I don't want to find out who the epileptics are in the room, so I won't point it at you. But the point of the matter being that one of the best weapons in the world you can have is a strobing flashlight of about 300 lumens or more. And if you have this thing set to go on high, I'm lumaholic. I'm powerless over my addiction to lights. You know, you couldn't tell that by looking at me though. So, hey, you know, if you can't have fun, don't go to doctors for disaster preparedness, right? So, but anyway, number one is if they use a deadly weapon. Number two is if they do the assault in a deadly way. And number three is if they do the assault in a way that will cause a fracture or amputation or incapacitation of a body organ or part. Those are the circumstances under which you may legally be able to justify deadly force. However, anytime you use or even threaten to use deadly force, a prosecutor is going to look and review the circumstance in almost every single case. And the prosecutor is looking for three things, and if you're taking notes, you're going to need 3 lines on regular paper or 6 lines on short paper. The first line is, I've been teaching this for 26 years, the first line is M. And M is for motive. Sounds like a Sue Grafton book, doesn't it? But motive is an expressed intent to commit any act. An expressed intent to commit any act. And motive can be verbal, I am going to kill you. And it could be nonverbal. Okay? Either way you look at it, it's an expressed intent to commit an act. O is opportunity. And it usually refers to the distance someone is from you. Jeremy is approximately 30 feet from me, maybe 28. If Jeremy were standing up with no table in between us, take this. No, you're hooked up. Up. Okay, that's stop. That's 21 feet right there. If he's standing 21 feet from me, hold that up. With that stick in his hand, is he a deadly threat to me at 21 feet away? Do I hear any no's? Okay, some yeses, some no's. Okay. How long, assuming either one of us were in any kind of shape, how long would it take him to run 21 feet? Especially me. There's a reason I have a stick. Okay? So, the simple physics of it is if someone starts to run at you and they are determined to reach you, they're accelerating. They'll reach you in about 1.5 seconds depending on their level of physicality. Right? The human mind, and I'm telling this to a room who already knows this, but the human mind takes somewhere about 1/4 second for you to realize someone's running towards you, and about 1/4 second to make the decision to turn, and then some amount of time to get the message from your mind to your muscles to move. In that time, his rate of acceleration, his delta V, has increased, and mine is at 0, and I'm overcoming inertia, quite a bit of inertia. Okay? So I cannot get out of his way by the time he reaches me, even if he is fairly decrepit. All right? But what I can do is what? Well, if I back up, he's just going to reach me before I can get out of the way. I can be Jesse Owens the fifth. His rate of acceleration is probably going to exceed my rate of acceleration, at least in the short interim until he gets there. And especially if he's got a reach-reducing tool, this is 58 inches long. If you grab it by the bottom, you're now 52 inches away from me, plus the length of your arms, okay? You can swing this and massively reduce the amount of time it takes to reach the person. But what you can do is get off the X, okay? You can get off the X, get away from the axis of the attack. If he is at north, and actually he is at north, and I am at south, I happen to be facing south, so, all right, I can go either west or east. I can get off the axis line of the attack. Now I'm flanking him, and I'm in a position to give him a shove or just get out of dodge, and now I can run north after he passes me, and I can now take advantage of the opposite effect of his acceleration towards me. Let me give you a little brief statistic. In the United States, almost all attacks with a handgun happen at 25 feet or less. If you think about that in human terms, if you take a long, wide step, it's about 36 inches, más o menos, right? If you can get 8 long, wide steps between you and the attacker, his chances of hitting you with handgun fire are only about statistically 4%. And if you practice, yours are better than his. So those are the simple odds, okay? But just speaking in broad terms, getting away from somebody is who is a threat to you is the best thing you can do in terms of self-defense. So motive, that's opportunity, and C is capacity. Let's say that he and I are down at the Ronstadt, it's called the Transit Center, but lovingly in Tucson we call it the Ronstadt Transient Center, the place where the buses come together in the middle and you can take buses in different directions and all that. So, and he comes staggering up to me with this glass 2-liter bottle, 2 liters of Mad Dog 2020 and says to me, "Give me your wallet or I'll hit you." Does he have motive? Has he expressed a motive? What is it? Robbery. Who said it? Okay, robbery. Okay. Does he have present opportunity? Does he have capacity? Exactly right. We don't know. But the prosecutor will second guess. And if you shoot somebody who does that, you're probably going to be indicted when you could simply give him a good hard push and get him away from you. And if he falls over and hits his head and dies, it's on him, not on you, because he was just not balanced. All you did was push him away. Okay? So that's motive, opportunity, and capacity in a very tight nutshell about using physical force and deadly physical force. Okay? So the prosecutor's going to look for those 3 things: motive, opportunity, and capacity. And if the bad guy does not have all 3 of them in sufficient quantity you are going to face a grand jury. So you have to be able to clearly articulate to the police who arrive what happened. But here's the problem. The way police work is that if you happen to be standing there wearing a firearm, and there's a person laying on the ground with several holes in them, leaking blood and other bodily fluids, do this. Either draw a diagram or have in your head the diagram, the one-dimensional diagram of a house, a standard house with a peaked roof. Okay, you got 5 points on it. At the top is LEO, law enforcement officer. On the left corner of the roof is the perpetrator. On the right corner is the victim. On the lower corner here is the witness, and on the lower corner here are bystanders. Okay? So there's 5 possible positions when the police arrive, right? And if you don't declare your category to the arriving cops, they're going to assign you one. You probably won't like the assignation. So the question is, if you're wearing the gun, there's 3 pieces of brass to the right of you, 9 or 10 feet. Your magazine is depleted by 3 rounds, and there's a person with 3 holes in them leaking bodily fluids over there. What category are they usually going to assign you? Perp, yeah. And he is? Yeah. Generally speaking, that's how they're going to see it. And if you take your gold-plated CCW permit out of your RFID wallet, okay, so they can't scan the chip, which it doesn't have anyway, okay, and you pull out your gold-plated CCW permit and you have your gleaming smile and you say, "Don't worry, officer, I'm the good guy. Here's my permit." What are the next 4 words you are likely to hear? Correct. Right, you are under arrest. Okay? You can't do that. The reason you can't do that is because what the police officer sees with his Mark 1 Mod 0 eyeball is a victim and a perpetrator. And if you tell them your eyes are lying, they're going to go, "Yeah, blank, blank." You put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest. Okay? So, the question is, how do you convert the arriving police officers into the rescue party? And this is kind of one of the most important things in the class I teach, that and how to surrender without getting shot, which I consider to be a valuable skill. Your mileage may vary, but I think it's worth the whole $80 I charge for the class. Okay? Like I say, it's up to how you value yourself. So, but anyway, this isn't a course on self-respect. It's a course on safety and not getting arrested for defending yourself, okay? The first thing you have to do are those 5 positions of that house I described for you, okay? The top one, so who is the only person, when the police arrive on the scene of an event where they've been summoned, who is the only identity of whom they are 100% certain? Correct. Whoever said that. Correct. Yeah, themselves, right. You might be a police officer or a retired officer, okay, but you're not the officer in the circumstance. So you can scratch that one off the list. So when the police arrive, what you're going to do is you're going to help them to do their job. This is a 7-part statement if you're taking notes, okay? What's the first thing you're going to say when the cops get there? No, that tends to make you can, but it tends to make you look guilty. Okay, if you assume the surrender posture. You want to tell the officer the most vital piece of information that they possibly could know. Right, or shorter version, "I'm the victim." Or, those of you who want to express some faith, "Thank God you're here, officer. I'm the victim." Now, this is confusing to some officers who see the person on the ground bleeding and see you standing there if you're open carrying, right? What's the next most important thing the police could know? No. Wait. You don't ever do that. Right. Well, the witnesses or the perpetrator, they kind of compete for second place. But for purposes of this exercise, we're going to say the perpetrator. I'm the victim, he's the perpetrator. Now number 3 is the witnesses. If you had a choice Between the perp getting away or the witnesses getting away, which would you rather? Why? Exactly. Okay, so I'm the victim, he's the perpetrator, those are the witnesses. Now we begin to get to what happened. The police will ask you what happened. This number 3 is so critical because what you're going to do, this is a frame, what we call a framing statement. It's an A, B, and C. A is you're going to create the frame or the context for why you used a deadly physical force. And what you tell them is, whatever the truth is, whatever you were doing, I was consulting a patient in my practice when this person barged in the door, or I was out walking the dog, or I was out for my, can I ask you to email that to me? Thanks. Yeah, if anybody takes a picture, I'd love to get a copy of it. So anyway, I was out walking the dog. I was out for my nightly exercise walk. This is my exercise walk stick because I have used it to defend against a dog one time. It does have a fairly bright light on it. And it also, if I drop something and I'm too lazy to bend over, has a pickup stick on it. It's kind of handy. I like things that do more than, I like stuff that does more than one thing. Kind of like, Leatherman tool, right? So I might leave the house without a firearm, but not without a Leatherman tool. That's just a no-go. Anyway, so I was out for my nightly walk, and this fellow jumped out of the bushes and put a knife to my throat. So you've just given the frame of what you're doing there. You're giving a frame of the threat that happened. And the third thing you're going to say is, the C in that statement is, I knew if I didn't act in that instant, I would be dead or badly hurt. So I used force. What is it you just told the officer? Actually, 4 things you just told the officer in that statement. What are they? You're the victim, but you've already said that. Was it immediate? Immediate. What else? Yeah. Grave bodily injury. Yeah. Deadly. Unlawful. And that you knew if you immediate, unlawful, grave fear, and that if you didn't act, that was your only choice. What you just did to the cop is read him the technical specifications for the justification of the use of physical and deadly physical force, without being a jerk and saying, "Well, officer, pursuant to ARS 13404 and 405." And that's worse than using force in defending yourself, because now he's going to think you're a lawyer. And there's no reason for vile accusations, none. So anyway. So, all right, so they ask you what happened, and you say to them, well, I was out for my whatever, and this guy did whatever it was he did. I knew if I didn't act in that instant, I'd be dead, so I used deadly force. Now they're going to start asking you all kinds of other time and place and refinement questions. So here's what you say to them. Wait a minute, officer, there's something important before we continue. I want you to know that I will sign the complaint and I will prosecute. Now, why do you say that? 2 reasons, really. Why?
Well, one of them is to show that you're confirming what you said before. You're willing to put your money where your mouth was.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is, well, I guess to let him know that he's not going to waste his time with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is another thing, and that's rarely does the perpetrator wish to prosecute the victim. What you're doing is you're establishing a bona fide. You're saying, I really am the victim, without saying, I really, really am the victim here, officer. You're saying, look, I am going to put my money where my mouth is. I will sign that complaint and I will prosecute. Did you want to ask? Or you just, okay, got it. Trying to follow me. So normally I'm not ever accused of moving fast enough to get away from a camera, so this is good. The next thing you're going to say to that officer is, and this is the clincher, okay? This is the last part of the statement. Is this 7? Okay, number 7. Good, I'm on track. Number 7 is, officer, I promise you my full cooperation after I have my attorney's permission, which no competent attorney is going to give, but you're not going to say that to them. What you're going to do, the reason is you want to appear to be submissive and cooperative. You want to appear not to be offering any resistance to the officer. And you are not. You are simply asserting your basic rights to remain silent unless your attorney is present. Now, what's the most important thing you could do after you say, I promise you my cooperation after I have my attorney's permission? Shut up. Whoever said that is right. What do you call it if you open your mouth and speak again? Shooting yourself in the foot might be a synopsis of it, but it's called by the courts a spontaneous exclamation. And spontaneous exclamations, what does the Miranda warning say? Right, can and will be used against you in a court of law, okay? They're not saying that for sport. They mean it. Now, what they can do is they can talk about you in your presence. And if they talk about you within your earshot, and they'll say something they know is deliberately wrong in order to get you to blurt out some correction of it, and usually it's something fairly egregious, like, well, you know, we heard he was strangling the fella's dog, and your dog's not there, and you go, no, wait, that's not. You just surrendered your right to remain silent. No matter what they say, shut up. I have found something very handy for this in a circumstance, and it's earplugs. Put earplugs in, you can't hear what they're saying, or now I guess the thing is you got to put in what do they call those things? The beats, the earbuds, and you know, it is now time for Rachmaninoff on your phone. Or, if you really refine, Shostakovich's Seventh Symphony. I promise you will hear nothing. Da, 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 da. I promise you will not hear what the police say while listening to Shostakovich's Seventh Symphony. And, yes, ma'am? It's not a bad idea, but you don't want to the question is, shouldn't you put your gun on the ground? It depends. I wished I'd brought a training gun with me. Does anybody have anything that resembles the shape of a firearm? I've only got one live gun with me, and no, I'm going to drop it. I don't want to do that. All right, I'll just simulate. That's okay. Here. Yeah, here we go. I got it. So let's say you're in the unfortunate circumstance of having the gun out when the police arrive. That is very bad. Right? I'm telling you, you need to have a holster that and I'm not going to touch this, it's a live gun, but when you put it in, it should make a nice definitive click, or at least you can feel when it hits the bottom of the holster so you know it's there. Because when you're under stress, you can't tell. Your senses, you may be experiencing tachyphysia where things move in slow motion. You have auditory exclusion, visual exclusion. And then what's worse is you begin to get the dopamines, the runner's high from having been really, really, really scared, and then the braking chemicals put into your body to slow you down. Now you're on a chemical high. And now you're going to start talking to the cops? Duh. It's stupid, okay? So let's say you're in the bad position. You have the gun out when the cops arrive. You got the bad guy proned out 6 feet away from you, and you got the bad guy at gunpoint, right? The police say drop the gun. If you do, the gun's 6 feet from the bad guy. You going to drop it? You have to. No, don't move. You have to drop the gun, or the police are going to shoot you, okay? They're going to give you 5, 6, 7 chances, and then they're going to shoot you. So here's what you do. Show of hands, who's right-handed in the room? Left-handed? Ooh, cool. Not a bigoted room. All right. I'm left-handed. All right. So take the gun. If you're right-handed, turn it on its left side. If you're left-handed, conversely, turn the gun on its right side. At the full extension of your arm, not out in front of you, but at the full extension of your arm, but close to your body, and drop the gun on its side. Don't take the mag out. Don't pull like an IPSC match where you have to jack the round out of the chamber and show clear to the range master. None of that crap. Just simply turn the gun on its left side on its right side if you're left-handed, or on its left side if you're right-handed, and drop it flat, okay? If you drop it flat, it won't bounce much. If you drop it on the butt of the gun or the barrel of the gun, it's going to take a hop, skip, and a jump, and nobody knows what direction. Okay? So, Then, now the gun is 5.5 feet from the bad guy. What do you do? What do you do? How are you going to inactivate the gun? Kicking it out of the way takes looking down, takes intentionality. You could miss, you could trip yourself. Simply stand on it. That's correct. Now, I'm standing on a round rolling object here. But the point of the matter is, I don't care how nice your gun is. I don't care if you just put Coca-Cola grips with a laser in it. Stand on the gun and inactivate it. Put half of your body weight on the gun so that no one can drag it out or kick it out or slap it out from under your foot. At that point, when the police officer says, move backwards towards me, now you can slide the gun towards the cop. When it hits him in the ankle, he will understand that you've just surrendered the gun to his jurisdiction. Okay? That's how you'd surrender without getting shot. That alone is worth the $80. Okay? So, anyway, I've passed around what we do at the Citizens Defense League that I co-founded in 2005 with 3 other guys. We are the main self-defense civil rights lobby in Arizona. We've had 63 good laws signed by 3 different governors over the last 14 years, including our bellwether legislation, which is constitutional carry. We have made it so that if you come to Arizona, how many of you are here in Arizona from another state? Wow. Welcome. Welcome to freedom. You can come from your other state and bring or borrow, when you get here, you can't buy, but you can bring or borrow any kind of weapon you want and put it anywhere on your person you want in Arizona, as long as you don't go to 9 places, nuclear generating stations, hydroelectric facilities, secure police facilities, prisons, jails, or there's a couple school grounds and a couple other places. As long as you don't go to those places in Arizona, you can go anywhere in the state you want, including our national parks, open or concealed, or state parks. Open or concealed, no permit, no license, no registration. And in Arizona, we have made it so that no one can force you to register a firearm. And if cities, counties, towns, boards, and districts attempt to violate state law, they can have their state shared revenues suspended until they change their law. Tucson tried their hand at that last year, and they got threatened with the loss of $55 million of state shared revenue, never to be to return to them, and the Supreme Court voted against them 7-0. You're welcome. It was our bill that did that, the Arizona Citizens Defense League. What we do at the Citizens Defense, we don't go to court, we don't do protests, we only do what works, and that is you go to the legislature and you change the law. And our philosophy is, you can sign the bill and do the right thing this time, Governor, or don't worry, the next one will. That's our negotiating position. It is not a problem to us with the hired help, which is what we call the elected officials in Arizona. They are the hired help. They will be replaced in 2, 4, 6, or if necessary, 8 years when they term limit out. All right? And we'll just get the next servant. Government is servant, not master. And one of the things we try to get people to know and learn is what is the stated purpose of government in Arizona. Now, you can fill in your state in that almost all, in fact, I looked up all 50 state, well, 57, all 50 state constitutions, right? And every one of them has a stated purpose of government, some better than others. But in Arizona, the stated purpose of government is located, if you want to fact check me and look it up, and it's in Article 2, Section 2 of Arizona's Constitution. It says the purpose of government is that all power is inherent in the people, and that government is created to preserve the rights of the individual. That's what the stated purpose of government is in Arizona. Now, one of the things when people run for elective office, I like to do, and it's embarrassing as hell, and most of the other talk show hosts on my own station have banned me from calling, is because when they have a guest on that's running to be the hired help in the legislature, the city council, or the county board, I ask them, what is the stated purpose of Arizona's Constitution, what is the stated purpose of government according to Arizona's Constitution? Most of them make a sound on the air that sounds sort of like somebody shining my flashlight in their face. Gee, I don't know. I've had hosts go, well, Charles, why don't you tell them? Oh, that's easy, John, because I'm not running for the position. That's why I don't tell them. And if they don't know, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green, Libertarian, Vegetarian, I don't care, they're respectfully not qualified to hold the office. 'Cause you know why? Because they're about to swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, right? How do you uphold something you don't know? Really? I mean, how many of you in here are doctors? Okay? You swore a Hippocratic oath, right? You know what's in it? I suspect you do, right? So how do you swear an oath to uphold a document that you don't know what's in it? And you don't have to memorize it. I know in Arizona law there's 47 titles. You don't have to know all Arizona law, but you darn well better know the stated purpose of government, I would think. Anyway, what we try and do is we try to keep people obeying the stated purpose of government by what I call, by a process I refer to as tailpiped carburetorism. Let it sink in a minute. And what it does is, the principle of it is, you learn the law so well that you take the tailpipe of government and stick it down its I guess I can't say carburetor anymore. Stick it down its injectors, okay, and cause it to choke on its own exhaust. You pit federal government against state government. You pit state government against local government. That's what we did in Senate Bill 1487, which is ensconced in Title 41 of Arizona law, which is the one that says if the city, county, town, board, or district passes a law that's in violation of state law, the complaint, it has to be a complaint made by a legislator, either a senator or a congressman. There's 91 of them. 30 in the Senate and 60 in the House of Arizona. One of them has to make a reference to the Attorney General. The Attorney General then shall investigate, and if they determine the city or state or county is in violation, they issue an order to the state treasurer within 30 days to suspend all state shared revenue except that which is by contract must be paid. And the only way that the city that's in question can challenge it is to go directly to the Supreme Court in what's called a special action. And like I said, the city of Tucson tried that. They laughed when it got passed. And they said, somebody will sue us and we'll drag it out in court for years. Nobody sues you. The Attorney General goes after you with the power of the pen. And what happened was the Supreme Court ruled against them. The Arizona Supreme Court ruled against them 7-0. The city of Tucson then turned around and changed the law 29 days later when they had 30 to comply. The vote to change the law was 4-3. That's the city you're in. So, all right, I've left 10 minutes for questions. Please ask me anything either about self-defense, about forming an organization. And by the way, if I've passed around literature about our organization, if you want to join, I have membership cards. I'm not here, or applications. I am not here to coerce anything. If you want to ask, I've got them up here in the on the stage. You can talk to me afterwards. Ask me about self-defense. Ask me about forming an organization. If you want to form an organization like the Arizona Citizens Defense League in your town or state, I will gladly make sure that all of our founding documents go into your inbox. Yes, sir.
This is kind of about forming an organization.
Do me a favor. Say your first name for me.
Robert?
Robert, okay.
It's kind of about forming an organization. It sounds like you worded the law cleverly so that you didn't have, it made it hard for them to work their way around it. And I just wondered, particular lawyers that helped with that, or how you managed to come up with the ideas for the legislation that you drafted, because it seems like you did a good job.
Robert, thanks. That's a great question. How was the legislation drafted? So generally speaking, the Citizens Defense League doesn't write laws. Advocacy organizations are not supposed to write laws. The legal counsel for the House or Senate is supposed the joint JLC, Joint Legislative Council, is who actually crafts the laws. However, what you can do is find a law you like and bring it from another state statute body, print it out, or indicate the URL of the specific law, and send that to your friendly legislator, who is now going to ask his legislative council to draft similar legislation. That's what we did in the case of Senate Bill 1487, which went into Title 41 of Arizona law. And don't ask me to quote the part.
And where'd you get the law?
Florida. Well, you go online. Every state has got their own laws and statutes online. And you simply go to, in Arizona, it's Arizona Revised Statute. Just change, edit, cut, paste the name of your state. Florida, name a state where one of you are from. Texas. Texas is a special case because the legislature meets, meets only every 2 years, which is a great idea. The public freedom is in less jeopardy on the non-legislative years. And so Texas has, we've tried, we had Lone Star Citizens Defense League, and we've had Texas CDL, both have launched and fizzled. We've tried to help people do it. It is not an easy thing. We had the moon and the stars came together just right. We had 4 people, one who had experience in lobbying, a second one who had experience in lobbying and also a few other skills, a retired NYPD cop. The third is a retired IRS enforcer who is specialist at doing things exactly right with paperwork. Oh man, is he good at filings. And the third guy who is some wingnut on the radio who is pretty good at dealing with the media. And you need a media component. You need somebody to be able to talk to the media as one of them. And the thing I tell them when I talk to them is, look, I'll tell you stuff on the record and off the record. The day you print something off the record is the day I erase you from my phone and never take your call again. And I tell every other journalist live on the radio what you did. And this call is recorded, so you can't deny you knew. Okay? So that's how I deal with the media. I have a velvet hammer for them. And when you know how to deal with the media, it's pretty, and I'm one of you, guys. I'm one to the media. Look, I'm one of you. I'm a reporter. I'm an opinion journalist. I'm a this, I'm a that. I know how important it is for you to get it right. And if you listen to me, I will tell you what to ask the other people to make you look good. Now they're listening. Okay, go ahead. Your first name is?
My first name is Bob.
Bob. Hi, Bob.
I got a concealed carry permit when I was a resident in the state of Washington, but now I live in the Phoenix area. Is this still good, valid?
Arizona recognizes any other permit, but since 2010, a permit has not been required in Arizona.
Oh.
The only place you can go in Arizona with a permit that you couldn't go legally without it is into a place that serves alcohol by open container if you are not consuming spirituous beverages and there is no sign prohibiting entrance. And the sign has to be 8.5 by 11, white paper, black lettering, 8-inch circle, red circle around a black gun. The gun faces to the left. The slash is from the upper left to the lower right, and in 1-inch tall letters, it says no firearms per ARS 4-244. If it has that sign, you can't legally be in the bar with a gun.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But other than that, now, you can, if I were you, I would find a good CCW class. All right, I do teach one if you're here in Tucson. Most of you are not from Tucson, but find a good, competent instructor. I'll tell you what, there's a really good way, and this is something else I wanted to say but didn't. How many of you in your practice have insurance? Everybody, just about, I would think, right? How dumb would it be for you to have a practice without insurance? Okay? Just totally ridiculous. Why would it be any different about self-defense? There's a bunch of different organizations out there. I'm a member of the United States Concealed Carry Association. I could sell it. They offered me the ability to sell it. I declined because it's something of a conflict of interest to have students you're teaching and be trying to sell them something. So I deliberately, for reasons of principle, don't sell it. But you can go online, uscca.com, uscca.com, and sign up for their plan. They've got a plan that's like $22 a month, $30 a month, or $47 a month. It just gives you different levels of coverage. God forbid you end up having to shoot somebody, or you just point the gun at them and then you get arrested for it, okay? So you now call the 800 number. I think it's an 855 number. I'm not sure. I got the card in my wallet. And you tell them I've been involved in a use of force. Now your lawyer is, well, they're not your lawyer yet, but they'll find you a lawyer and they'll help you get defended. And they'll give you, in my case, I got the middle plan. It's up to $500,000 in legal costs. It is full-time four-wheel drive stupid to carry a gun and not carry insurance against your getting, because the main weapon the prosecutor has against you, unless you did something incredibly stupid or wrong, the main weapon they have against you is intimidation. Yes, sir. My name is Charles Heller, Heller. If you want to reach me, my email is charles@libertywatchradio.com. I welcome hearing from any of you. Here's another thing. If you want more information, you want detailed information, you want a whole packet of information, send an email to treasurer@azcdl. treasurer@azcdl.org. We'll mail you a whole bunch of information, more than that brochure. It'll come in snail mail. We'll have all kinds of stuff, different things. Our newsletter. I didn't bring our newsletter. I didn't want to haul a bunch of stuff here. We have a fascinating newsletter. There is nobody who is paid staff in the organization. Everybody's a volunteer. I'm here on my own aegis in terms of the organization. I don't get paid for this. Nobody gets. The only people who get paid, we have a lobbying contract. Our president and vice president are our lobbyists. We have a lobbying contract with them, but nobody else in the organization gets paid a penny. Nobody profits from what we do. Okay? I do this because this is what I want to do. treasurer@azcdl.org. You can join the organization online, azcdl.org. We have members from all over. We have members from the PRC, the People's Republic, California. We have a machine gun dealer in England who's a member. We even have people from Kazakhstan. Dr. Murphy. Well, we that was mean. But anyway, we have people from all over who are members of the Citizens Defense League, and if you want our help to start an org, it's free. Okay, I got 2 minutes left for another question. Anything else? I'm amazed I'm going to end early. No one's ever accused me of that.